All right, so this is more of a correction to some of the things that I've been saying in regards to a character that's known as Francis Neely in the season one of Reacher, in regards to this character, whether or not they actually exist in the book. Okay, so I am actually in the sixth book of the Reacher series, and the book is called Without Fail. And I don't want to spoil anything that's going on in that book. But I did want to make mention that the character does exist in the book series, but is not in Killing Floor, as I had mentioned repeatedly throughout as we go. So, them making the decision to bring her into the show already is kind of I don't want to say it's confusing. It's something that, if you read the book, you would know that this character is not a thing in the book. However, you go ahead and get to the sixth book in the series, you get introduced to her. And she does have a connection to Reacher. Their relationship's a bit different. The character in the book, when she looks at Reacher, she has an attraction to him, but she was also born with it's kind of like a phobia. It's not, I don't know if you would try to call it a mental disorder. The one thing that she hates is to be touched by anybody. And they had, made mention about her condition, whether or not it was derived from trauma. She says that it's something that she's always had, or it's Reacher says that it's something that she's always had since she was born. She doesn't like to be touched by anybody, and it's kind of the reason why she doesn't act on her impulses or attractiveness to Reacher. The description of her also in the book is she has dark eyes and dark hair, and she has a tan. So the casting of the character that plays her isn't necessarily a bad choice. It's just that the character didn't exist in that story whatsoever. There's one other thing about Neely's character. The author apparently has said it as such, and again, I'm listening to the audiobooks, and I believe the pronunciation of her name is not Neely in the books, it's Nagley. So there's a little bit of difference there, but I did want to correct if you hear me going on during the review here, me saying that this character does not exist in the book. It's a made up character. This is why I was saying that, is because she doesn't actually appear until you get to the sixth book in the series. Along with that, that's where the 1/10 gets mentioned and that she was a member of that. So that is correct in what they're saying in the TV series. It's just not something chronologically that's come up at how the story unfolds in the books. Other than that, I'll go ahead and let you get on with the rest of the review here. All right, welcome back to my channel. This is Jason, also known as Ominous Prime, and we're here, the last episode for Reacher Season 1, and we're going to be comparing it with Killing Floor by Lee Child, the book that started this whole series, as it were. It's the source material. And I'll be comparing and contrasting as we're going throughout this season finale. And I don't want to delay too much. So we're going to go ahead and get into that. All right. So without delaying it further, let's go. All right. So it closed off last episode with Kleiner Jr. and Picard here and Teal. Not at all how this happens in the book whatsoever. They don't even have this conversation. At least not here. We'll get to where they have this kind of conversation later. So Roscoe, Charlie, and the girls are actually supposed to be at Kleiner's place already. Sort of like this. However, they're already being held there. This whole conversation isn't a thing that happens in this way. However, um, so they're going to task the same task that was given to Reacher in the book. They're going to give it to him here and make sure that he does what he's supposed to. Picard's going to be sent. Now, the reason that this is done in the book is because it's crucial that they have Hubble. Hubble's work that he does is indispensable. There's nobody else around that they can have that handles that, which is to get more paper, more ones located and in the hands of Kleiner. So they can go ahead and remove the ink off and then print them as hundreds. Yep. Why they're disclosing this? It's a little weird. They wanted to have him as like some weird mastermind, which isn't really in the book because, like I had mentioned in prior episodes, he's a lot more like the cousin that they had portrayed earlier that Reacher is dealing with. And I believe at this point in the book, Reacher had already killed Kleiner Jr. and killed him over at Hubble's. And so Kleiner Sr. is the mastermind of making sure people got killed that needed to get killed. And he is furious about the death of his son at this point. And his wife was also not doing well. So he is stressed out beyond belief. Teal's supposed to be over at the warehouse along with Kleiner Sr. And Picard is also there. They're keeping watch on the operations because this is supposed to be Saturday. And so there's a short timeline that they need to get Hubble. Because once the blockade is gone in the book, they need to be able to start running that money out because they have business partners that they need to go ahead and get that money out to for distribution. But these points here that are coming up effectively is what happens in the book with Reacher and Hubble and Picard. Black coffee and peach pie. All right, finally. Last episode, right? Peach pie's coming. Hopefully it's non-toxic. In the book, Reacher's panicking in his head because he has no idea where to find Hubble. None whatsoever. That much is true in the book. This description is a bit laughable of how he came to get there, but hey, you gotta sell it, right? You can't. Yeah. They are on a timetable of sorts. Stick a fork in it. This interaction with this cop here is not a thing that happens in the book. Again, in the book, Finley had not been fired and not put into this type of position. But we need to have a racist cop in Georgia. So now we have one. Hooray! I'm guessing it didn't take long for the fork to fly out. I don't recall the time of day that this happened in the book, but in my head it was daytime, not nighttime. But it seemed to be the case with a bunch of things. This is resolved a little differently here than it is in the book. Mm-hmm. Is he the only one that knows what metal sounds like? No, he shot Picard, right? Picard's missing. In the book, it's almost like this. So I believe in the book, you actually see Picard laying in the dirt, and then Reacher drives away. In the book, Reacher has to call several different places to narrow down where to locate Hubble. The way he does this is actually pretty accurate here and that he took the information that Hubble had given to him, and also how it's described how the aliases that Joe and Reacher choose for themselves, he believes that Hubble would do it in the same way. So it's based off of Beatles' name, a variance of that. So he can go ahead and use that. So in the book, he was calling around the different locations of hotels and motels asking for persons by this name. It helped him narrow down the places that they could possibly be. This separation actually does happen. However, they're not cuffed in the book. In the book, they're put to work while Teal sits there with a shotgun, and I believe Kleiner Sr. was also there with a shotgun. They're at two different locations within the warehouse, overseeing and making sure that these women were doing the hard labor that they needed to have done, which I believe was using a broom to push money around. So, like I said, it's kind of accurate. It's a variant, but it's close enough. So, to me, it's basically the same thing they did in the book. Here we go. This is a description that's sort of like what's in the book. However, the deadline is supposed to be tomorrow, and I don't believe that that's what they brought up here because they didn't have a definitive timeline to go ahead and get all this completed by. Some of the changes that are done here for the show, I do like. I like that it gives motivation for Paul Hubble to find a way out because he feels trapped. He's not somebody that's comfortable with the money and things like that that's going on. This Hubble is like always skittish. I do like Finley having this fight in him. Conflict is essential for story, so giving him somebody opposition is a necessary thing for this character to be interesting at all. I'll be back. If you haven't seen Terminator, I suggest going to watch Terminator. You may recognize this scene. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Go to sleep. Now, instead of Reacher gung hoing it himself, got a team of three. Well, effectively, it's more like a team of one, but hey, these two might be able to do something. No one knows. I think she just wrote in. Yeah, she caught the other hint, but didn't catch this one. Welcome to Mr. Mosley. Now, since this is the last episode, I guess I can get into it. What's explained in the book. Mosley had a sister that was a singer for Blind Blake. The reason why Reacher shows up to this town. Find out what happened to Blind Blake, just to explore the mystery. See if we can learn more about this blues singer or blues player. In any case, Mosley's sister was dating Blind Blake, and Blind Blake had bumped into, not to Teal, but to Teal's grandfather, the one who has the statue. When that happened, given the time period, and this is the time in our country when we had segregation and people being treated as second class citizens, and civil rights had not been established and fought for as of yet. But that cane that Teal likes to walk around with that big diamond shaped tip, grandfather used it to beat Blind Blake till he died on the street for bumping into him. And that was all with the urging of his grandson, because his grandson wanted to not be, he wanted to see his grandfather handle it. Spoiled and racist. Teal is still that way. So the introduction of these other characters as being a racist cop wasn't necessary because they already had a primary figure that was in charge of the city and racist. It already existed. You could say that maybe it's part of the culture and it permeated the other people in the town. Sure. People tended to follow the lead, as is explained in the book, of what Teal and what Kleiner did, and both of them avoided going to Mosley's for a haircut. Could be that Mayor Teal, not the one who has the statue, remembers Mosley's family and doesn't want to have anything to do with them because of what happened with Blind Blake and still kind of feels that way against that family. But the history is there. They left it out of the series here. It doesn't seem like they wanted to draw attention to the founder, but I think it could have drawn some parallels to what's been happening over the past few years if they would have kind of leaned into it, had this racist mayor whose grandfather has a statue and kind of looming over the town of Margrave, and had that statue torn down once Teal is taken down. You know, it kind of would have paralleled what's going on, because it's a sin that's carried through that family generation after generation. Now, for what's actually going on here, they're trying to find a way to gain entrance into the building. They're tucked out a plan here, so we'll get to see how that plays out here. It's kind of similar, kind of different to what happens in the book. For the most part, I'm not going to nitpick too much on how this is handled here, because writing it down in a book is a lot different than staging it for like film and for TV production. You still have to make it interesting to watch, and it has to make sense on how things happen. In a book, you can get away with something. For instance, and I'm not saying anything against Lee Child's writing at all. If you take like Lord of the Rings, I know it's completely different genre. It has to do with writing. Tolkien wasn't good at describing sword fighting. So whenever they had battles, it's like, they fight. They fought for, days. They fought for a week. He didn't get too into the details of what happened. So when they had to adapt that to film, they had a lot of freedom to do whatever they needed to do. There are some aspects that were key that happened in a battle that he would point out. But for the most part, it's, kind of whatever. Now, he's finally getting to have a cigarette that he had quit and is going to use it for something useful. Just kind of, in a way, doing a callback to a conversation they had during the first episode of the series. A fire does happen in the book, so this is just how they went ahead and did it. They don't all go in like this in the book. It's more Reacher on his own, infiltrating, Solid Snake style. If you have ever played Metal Gear, you'll know what I'm referencing here, because Hubble is not equipped to fight anybody. It's plausible what they decided to do here, where they gave Hubble one job: go in there, get your kids, get out, or get your kids and wife and get out. In the book, because they had so few people that were actually involved, they didn't have a whole warehouse full of people. And again, it wasn't Kleiner Jr. that was doing all of this, because he had already died in the book. So they're just swapping positions between Senior and Junior, making it seem that Junior is more calculating. He's got it all laid out to where he was going to take over, even willing to kill his dad and take power for himself, and do this along with his cousin. It's almost as if in my mind that Kleiner Jr. is looking at this as, oh man, I lost my cousin too. That's one less share I have to deal with. The other part of it has to do with Venezuelans that were involved more heavily here than they were in the book. It's not even disclosed, I believe, what country any of the Hispanic individuals came from. So Hubble's getting his job done, getting the kids out. Now, in pure Hollywood style, you know that there's got to be a comeuppance for Picard, and it's got to come from Finley, right? The book is a little bit different, but not too much, because in here, in the one, we'll see what plays out here, but in the book, you're kind of waiting for it. You're wanting Finley to go ahead and get his chance to get back at Picard because of what he's done. So he does have like kind of that, trying to figure out why his friend would do this to him. Here, it's more like, I told you not to take that job in Margrave. Neely's involvement in this, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense if you've read the book first and then came to this. I did it in the opposite direction, so when I was going over the book, I'm like, oh, there's no Neely. And I understood why, at least from the way I understand it, after going through both. I don't see Neely as a necessity, because it actually takes away from what Reacher is doing on his own, which was he's able to take out the different obstacles that come up on his own. He's kind of like a one-man army, as it were. And so adding Neely kind of takes away from that, makes him more dependent upon other people. It could be that, maybe people want to see that vulnerability for Reacher because of how larger than life a character he is. I mean, physically, he's immense. I don't think in the book, because of what they were tasked with, that Roscoe and Charlie didn't have any way to fight back. So the one who actually took out Teal, I believe, was Reacher, and I believe he did it from like an upper level stairway. where he just shot him and then had to figure out how to take out Kleiner, because taking out one or the other puts the women in danger because they could have just been blasted with the shotguns. Here they're trying to do something a bit different so that everybody's adversary gets to square off one of the heroes. Yeah, he ain't coming back from that. He's been juiced. Now we have people from two different families that have been in Margrave for a long time dealing with each other, and he also is a former boss of sorts. And he ain't getting up from that either. Now you've noticed that Neely is not taking any hits at all throughout the series. Nobody's hit her, nobody shot her. I don't even know if she's gotten dirty yet. Like as like dirt getting on her, not her doing dirty deeds. Now it sounds like that I hate having Neely in here at all. I don't. I just don't find her as a necessary character. That's just an extra person being written in for no reason. That's my opinion of it. And I don't know if it's for somewhere down the line they plan on doing a separate series for Neely. So they had to embed her in here so they could have something to branch off of to do their own thing. And it's not unheard of. We've had this done with other shows, other movies, even. And it's not just a recent thing, it's been done in the past. This whole big speech thing isn't a thing in the book either, be it senior or junior. They're too busy in a firefight and there's fire and everything's going up in smoke everywhere. I don't necessarily find him a compelling villain. He did some bad things, but to me, he seems kind of weak. Does that mean Kleiner Sr. and Teal were a more formidable opponent in the book? No, not really. It's just different. Now we have this guy here who's, I don't know, he's kind of a walking cliche. Now, if the series does continue on, I expect there to be kind of like a topping of what was done on the prior season. You know, that tends to be what's done with any kind of sequel. Just build upon it and make it bigger, make it better, make it stronger. So the next villain will be just that. And I have to say, in the book, if they follow what was done in the book, the second book has a villain that is quite horrible as far as the deeds they do. A lot more calculating, really odd. Almost, I would describe him as like a Bond villain. Ooh, ooh. Shriners, I don't think they'd want to deal with this guy. Ooh. Now, the TV series does something interesting here as they kind of neatly handle the ending of this, right? And if my wife were watching this right now, she would already say that he's dead because if just the sheer force of the explosion, you're standing there, that impact from the force pushing out would just kill you. You'd die from the shock. But it's a Hollywood thing. They need to have the explosion where you wonder, oh no, did they live? And then, out they come stumbling out. No, I'm fine. Right. Every time you see somebody that's blown into the air by an explosion, reality, they're probably dead. As soon as the shock hits them and sends their body flying, they should be dead. And if you've ever watched, there was a series on History Channel that had to do with warfare, different types of weapons, and they would have them pit against different opponents around the same time period, similar types of weaponry, and go who would win, and they'd run a computer simulation. I can't remember the name of the show, but I'm sure a lot of you in the comments section would be able to tell me exactly what that show was. Now this is over at her home. Kind of what happens in the book as far as them being here. They actually have a conversation in the book about what's happened and her just figuring out what. There's another flashback here. That's not in the book, but it's kind of touching that they do this here. Kind of close off Joe's involvement in Reacher's life and also with his mother's. In any case, Reacher and Roscoe kind of have a heart to heart about different things. One of which is Roscoe wants Reacher to stay in Margrave. She wants to make changes in Margrave. Teal's gone, so she wants to see about possibly maybe even running for mayor. As in the book, she's a bit older than she is portrayed here in the series. There's an explosion that occurs at the warehouse, right? Because of all the money. It shoots out money, these counterfeit bills, up into the air, and it gets carried off in the wind, and it's all over the place, which brings the attention of law enforcement outside of Margrave, and also gets the attention of the FBI. And it also gets the attention because it ends up in the news of a bunch of local people scrambling to try and get as much of this counterfeit money into their hands, which the government does not want to have happen. So they're in a rush to get into town. And this is something that Reacher knows he does not want to be in town for. So this kind of puts Roscoe and Reacher kind of opposed on where they see their future. And it hurts Reacher because he's really into Roscoe and he's having to make a decision of to run or to stay. Now he's resolved everything that he needed to do in regards to what happened with Joe. Reacher doesn't set down roots. He travels light. Like I had mentioned, he has the clothes on his back and just continues on that way. So how the book ends and how the TV series ends are a bit different. And that's why I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do with season 2 of Reacher. Now, if you have an idea of what they're going to be doing for season 2, please put it in the comments below. I'd like to see what your thoughts are on this. I've thought about it a lot, and I could see it, him staying in Margrave, just doing something different because of the established characters. They're all likable for the most part. And it would be interesting to see what the aftermath was, and how that's handled in town. But they also show it here to where he's going to be leaving. Nope, he doesn't. Kind of tease it here a little bit, though. Now, if he stays in town, it reminds me of what was done with an anime series called Rurouni Kenshin. It's also known as Samurai X. There's two different series, but it's based off the same stuff. If you like anime, I definitely recommend taking a look at it. They did have it available on Netflix for some time. It may still be available there. There's also a movie series that's based off of that same series that was done. And there's her digits. The talk was a little bit more on the sadder tone in the book. Not as much of a throwaway line as they do it here as a joke. The relationship they had in the book was a lot more tender. Kind of hoped that he would stay. It's not built up as much here. So even if they were to do season 2 and have him go elsewhere with a completely different set of cast, just himself, they'd probably have Neely in there somewhere just to continue her being in this. It's like a continuing character, someone that you would have some kind of attachment to from season to season. So you're wondering what happened with the dog that Reacher kept going out to see Finley's dog now. Again, that's not a thing in the book, but hey, it's funny. So we're back at the diner. I believe that was Lee Child. I could be wrong, but I believe that was Lee Child that just walked on by. So Finley's got his ring for his dearly departed wife. In the book, not so much. They fell apart because he was at home now. He was retired. He wasn't working as a cop in Boston, and she got used to the life of him actually being out and doing his thing. So she got tired of him. So they fell apart. Yep, I can agree with that. This is actually a change in story that I actually like for Finley. Him getting a clean start. In the book, he's actually going to stay in Margrave and rebuild along with Roscoe. All right. We got pie. Let's see how this goes. Best peach pie, right? This is so true of FOMO, right? You chase it and you have that thrill and you need to have it. And then, exactly. Don't be driven by FOMO. That's why I do these reviews. Hopefully, what I explain or what I show about any of these reviews, you look at it and you go, okay, either I need to get it or I don't need to get it, or I was satisfied with what you saw in the review. And it was enough to where I don't need to own it, but I'm glad I got to see something about it. It's nice to see a review on it. You kind of live vicariously by the person that's happy and enjoys it. So, yeah, he's walking out of Margrave. It doesn't necessarily mean he would not return and they do something completely different with the series for like another season or so. It's always a turn that they could do with the series. But that ends season 1. And again, if you have any thoughts on the season, please comment below. If you have any ideas what they might do in the future with the series, you know, give a comment on that as well. I may not do this in this way with any other TV series. I may just do a full season recap, and just review it overall. It's just something format wise that might work better, not just for me, but for you as well. So you're not having to come back, episode by episode. The only ones I may do that with is if it's like a new series or like a new season that's come out for a series. That's something to think about. And if you have any comments about anything that I just went over, again, the comment section is the best place to put it. I'll take a look and see what you put in there, and we can have a conversation about that. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe so you can go ahead and get access to these videos that I put out as they go. And I thank you for your time. And then, all right, have a good one.